Finally, after decades of being a third-tier team in their home venue, the Los Angeles Clippers, now led by the sixth richest person in the world and former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, are building their own arena, and quite an innovative one at that. After saving the team from Donald Sterling rule, Ballmer sought to take the Clippers to where they haven't been before, spending hundreds of millions on free agents and now billions to get them out of the Lakers' shadow and establish their own identity. In this video, which will be history heavy, we'll review just how far back the Clippers' third-tier status goes, and why Ballmer, despite opposition, is creating a generational shift the team has never seen before, and why the improvement is likely to stick. This is everything we know so far about the LA Clippers' new arena. As usual when we cover a franchise we haven't before, we like to do a deep dive on their history to get the full context as to how they got to this point. But if you would like to skip ahead to where we cover the developments specifically about the new arena, feel free using the chapters in the description. The Clippers originally began as one of 3 NBA expansion franchises before the 1970 season, starting play in Buffalo, New York as the Buffalo Braves. The team was first owned by a New York City-based investment firm that did not have direct ties to Buffalo and was owned by its employees. Without proper leadership, they failed to take an active role in their new NBA franchise, which resulted in the league repossessing the team before the first tip-off. The NBA then sold the Braves to a 33-year-old entrepreneur named Paul Snyder for $4 million. Originally from Queens, New York, Snyder used proceeds from selling his frozen food packaging company to finance the transaction. His late entry into the situation failed to allow adequate time to set up the organization properly, and consequently, the team performed poorly its first season. In addition, given the lack of seriousness the original owners had shown, fans followed suit, demonstrating more passion for Buffalo's new hockey team, the Sabres, which also debuted in 1970, and the Canisius College Golden Griffins, who had used the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium all 3 would be sharing for the past several decades. As a result, the Braves were given third priority when it came to scheduling, and were often forced to find other venues for home games, playing half a dozen games or so in Toronto every year. The Braves finished with a winning record the following 2 seasons, losing back-to-back in the Eastern Conference semifinals in their first ever playoff appearances. The team now was drawing league attendance and was consistently profitable, but despite this leverage, the owner of the Sabres and the president of Canisius University refused to relent any power over the schedule at Buffalo Memorial Auditorium to the Braves. This resulted in a much deeper problem in that since the Braves organization had little to no ability to schedule home games, the increasingly popular NBA was unable to finalize their schedule league-wide and broadcasting contracts until after the Sabres and Canisius University finalized theirs. This situation was unacceptable to the NBA, who told Snyder that he had to remedy the situation, to which the Sabres and Canisius University never relented. At this point, Snyder had to either move the team, build a new arena so the NBA could control its scheduling, or sell the team to someone who could. Faced with no other choice, Snyder agreed to sell the team to a Miami businessman for a little over $6 million. The city of Buffalo sued to block the transaction, which led the prospective buyer to lose interest. The drama concluded with the Braves signing a new 15-year lease to stay at the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, and it's unclear what became of the team's scheduling issues. The new lease did come with a catch, in that the agreement would be voided if the team sold fewer than 5,000 season tickets in a single season. Snyder, who at this point had been stomped on in public disputes with the owners of the Sabres, the president of Canisius University, and now the mayor of Buffalo, had had enough and sold a 50% stake in the Braves to another embarrassed owner in John Brown Jr., who most recently had been humiliated in being forced to disband the Kentucky Colonels in 1976 after the ABA-NBA merger. Brown acquiring full control from Snyder by the end of the following year. Brown quickly began liquidating the team's most valuable players, which at the time was financially lucrative for franchise owners to do, and hired 4 head coaches in 4 years, keeping the team in constant chaos. Whether intentional or not, attendance collapsed by the end of the 1977-78 season and cratered below the threshold needed to void the lease, breaking the Braves free of their commitments to Buffalo. Rather than explore relocation himself, Brown made an agreement with the Celtics owner Irv Levin to trade teams. Levin was a California businessman and preferred to have a team out west in the Northeast. However, he knew the league would never let him move the Celtics, and so he agreed to Brown's advances. The NBA General Counsel, David Stern, finalized the agreement between the 2 parties, with John Brown Jr. taking over the Celtics and Irv Levin taking the Braves to San Diego. San Diego had lost their original NBA franchise, the Rockets, to Houston in 1971 due to failed fan enthusiasm. Despite this and other failed franchises in the meantime, Levin decided to give the city another try anyway. Fresh off the boat, the Braves' name didn't sit well with locals, and so a naming contest selected Clippers as the team's new moniker. A clipper being a 19th century shipping vessel and fitting homage to the dozens of sailing ships that would pass through the San Diego Bay. The San Diego Clippers finished with a winning record in their first year in California. However, this would prove to be their only winning season while by the Bay. By the 1980s, the San Diego Clippers were at their lowest point, with attendance collapsing down to only 4,000 fans per game. And with Irv Levin being near retirement age, he lacked the interest in solving the larger problems behind the team's failures. Consequently, Levin sold the Clippers to Los Angeles-based attorney and real estate tycoon Donald Sterling in 1981 for $12.5 million. Sterling immediately held a press conference in San Diego, vowing to build the team into a contender. He committed to spending whatever was necessary and started with dozens of billboards and bus posters that featured him saying, "My promise, I will make you proud of the Clippers." And the team won 17 games that season. Controversy around Sterling's ownership had only just begun, as the following season, the NBA fined him for allegedly saying that he would be okay with the team tanking for the first draft pick the following year. Rumors that Sterling was going to move the team to Los Angeles surfaced shortly afterward, which led the league to perform a deep dive on Sterling and his operations, and found that he was behind in paying his creditors, including Clipper players. This led to calls for Sterling to sell the team, and for other league owners to vote him out. However, just before the NBA was about to conduct the vote, then League Vice President David Stern brokered a deal that allowed Sterling to maintain his ownership, as long as he hired someone else to run the team's operations, and Sterling hired Alan Rothenberg of the Los Angeles Lakers to do so, and Sterling remained owner of his team. NBA owners had vocalized that regardless of what resulted, the team should stay where it is. But San Diego, a city where one team had left, several more had folded, and now another was getting bottom of the league attendance, was not a place Sterling wanted to be. And after league owners voted against Sterling moving the team to Los Angeles in 1982, he decided to move the team there anyway in 1984, when they became known as the Los Angeles Clippers, playing home games at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena, then home to USC Trojans basketball and former home to the Lakers and others. Attendance to Clippers games doubled overnight, but win totals took much longer to improve, as it would be nearly 8 seasons before the team would finish with a winning record, and after that season, it would take another 15 years for the Clippers to finish with a winning record again, while occasionally making the playoffs with losing records. During the early years in Los Angeles, Donald Sterling began developing the reputation of being the worst owner in professional sports, something that only got worse over time. He was incredibly frugal, refusing to spend money on serious talent for players and coaches. Worse than that, coaches would have to sue the team after being fired to get the money owed to them in their contract. Also, traditionally uncharacteristic to league owners, Sterling liked to sit courtside during games and heckle his own players. On a personal note, Sterling became intertwined in a seemingly constant flow of sexual harassment and discrimination lawsuits from his subordinates, all of this contributing to the Clippers being considered the laughingstock of the NBA, and calls for Sterling to sell or move the team were near constant. While the Clippers were gaining negative notoriety, they were playing games in the city's 40-year-old Tier 2 at best venue, sharing the limited capacity Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena with a college basketball team and others, at a time when the Detroit Pistons were financing their own state-of-the-art arena in Auburn Hills, Michigan. The neighboring Lakers and Kings of the NHL played their games at a slightly newer and larger Great Western Forum, but when the Kings were acquired by new owners in the mid-1990s, they began pursuing a new arena, which eventually became the Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles. We'll cover more of the history behind the Forum and Staples Center in subsequent videos. Meanwhile, the Ducks of the NHL invited Sterling to relocate the Clippers to their recently completed arena in the Los Angeles suburb of Anaheim, which Sterling declined. After that, the Coliseum Commission that governed the Clippers' current arena approached Sterling about building a new arena in its place. But once it was announced that the Kings and Lakers would be moving to a new arena downtown, Sterling refused the commission's advances and decided to turn back the clock on the franchise once again, returning the team to third-class status just like in the Buffalo Braves days, by moving 2 miles up the road into the new Staples Center with the Kings and Lakers, where they once again became third-class tenants. Once the team began play at the new arena in 1999, Sterling began showing more willingness to spend on the franchise, signing proven players to long-term contracts, and in 2007, he spent $50 million to build the Clippers their own practice facility in Playa Vista, 1 mile south of where the Kings and Lakers had their facility, and construction was completed the following year. By the 2011-2012 season, the team had seriously begun turning things around, hitting on key players in both the draft and free agency, which resulted in the Clippers' first consecutive winning records in franchise history from 2011 to 2013, and as of 2023, they have yet to have another losing season, reaching the Western Conference Finals in 2021. Despite the incredible turnaround, the poison of a toxic culture created by Donald Sterling hadn't quite entirely been squeezed out, and the team still lacked leverage at Staples Center with the Kings and Lakers. In April 2014, gossip media outlet TMZ had obtained a recording taken by Donald Sterling's mistress 7 months prior. Sterling had been married since 1955, but quite regularly had extramarital relationships. The woman who made the recording, who herself is part black and was referred to by multiple names, had posted a photo on social media site Instagram that featured her posting with Lakers star Magic Johnson. In the recording, Donald Sterling took issue not with the fact that she was lingering with an in-town rival star, but with a black person, and requested that she not bring any black people to his Clipper games. The recording exploded across media the following day, with Donald Sterling being parodied on Saturday Night Live and receiving condemnation all the way up to then US President Barack Obama. Clippers players and coaches held a meeting immediately to discuss the incident and debated boycotting Game 4 of their playoff series with the Warriors before deciding against it, ultimately choosing to wear their warm-up shirts inside out to obscure the team's logo during warm-ups and while on the bench during the game, a gesture that would be duplicated across the NBA, a league that was made up of predominantly black players. The Clippers released a statement the following day stating that the mistress was currently being sued by the Sterlings and that she had vowed to get even with the family. Court records showed that 1 month before the recording was released, Sterling's wife had sued his mistress for the return of a Ferrari sports car, a Bentley, a Range Rover, a $1.8 million Los Angeles duplex, and more than $400,000 in cash. Regardless of what the mistress' intentions were, the comments had led Donald Sterling to be completely shunned by society. Charity donations he made were returned, community awards revoked, and sponsors dropped their partnerships with the Clippers. On April 29th, after only 3 full days had passed since the recording was released, and before Donald Sterling could publicly offer his side of the story, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver banned him from attending games and league meetings for life and fined him $2.5 million, at the time the maximum amount allowed under the NBA rules. Silver also stated that he would force Sterling to sell the team once 3/4 of franchise owners voted in favor of removing him. Sterling finally spoke publicly about the incident in an interview on CNN, saying his mistress baited him into making the comments and asked for forgiveness. But he made an already terrible situation even worse by going after Magic Johnson's character, to which the league found as egregious as the original recording. According to league rules, if an owner is forced to sell their team, all parties with an equity stake lose their position. Sterling had always co-owned the franchise with his wife Shelley, and she believed she had the full authority and responsibility to pursue the sale of the team, despite her husband's opposition. It was at this time that it was revealed that Donald Sterling had sought treatment for prostate cancer in 2012 and was showing early signs of Alzheimer's disease. Shelley cited his declining health as to why he was unfit to run the family's trust and therefore the Clippers franchise, eventually winning out in probate court. That's when Steve Ballmer, then recently retired CEO of Microsoft, stepped into the picture. He had made multiple attempts to keep and later bring a basketball franchise back to Seattle, and just a little over a month after the recording had been released, Shelley announced that she had reached a deal to sell the Clippers to Ballmer for $2 billion, 4 times the team's valuation, and the league dropped all its legal and internal fights with the Sterlings. Donald Sterling continued to protest the whole situation, suing the league, suing Adam Silver, suing his wife Shelley, suing his mistress, and tried to file an injunction to block the sale. But once Shelley won control of the estate in probate court, Donald Sterling was essentially powerless, and his days of NBA ownership were over. The sale of the Los Angeles Clippers to Steve Ballmer for $2 billion would be completed on August 12, 2014. With the Sterlings maintaining ownership of the team's practice facility, which they continue to lease to the Clippers as of 2023. Ballmer provided stability to a Clippers organization that had spent decades trying to shake irrelevancy to become a contender, only to be rattled by what could have been a Malice at the Palace type of franchise implosion. The Clippers were on the verge of becoming a perennial powerhouse in the league, but now that the toxic culture created by Sterling was gone, the Clippers' problems went back to being what they were before Sterling ever owned the team, being a third-class tenant in their home venue. As we've discussed, the Clippers have never had an ownership stake in their home arena, and the Lakers and Clippers have historically had different leases at Staples Center, now known as Crypto.com Arena. The Clippers receive a lower revenue share than the Lakers and Kings, who all split cash inflows with the venue's operator, AEG. The Clippers also have last priority in scheduling in the busiest arena in the US, and have next to no say on the in-game experience for their own home games. Even little things like concession stand menus and court lighting are things they can have no input on. Ballmer commented on their third-tier status in 2015, saying, "We're third guy in. We have third choice in dates. If you're a good businessman, you don't come to the end of your lease and say, 'I have no options, landlord. Please take me to the woodshed and beat me.'" When the Clippers moved to Staples Center in 1999, they signed a 15-year lease that they renewed in early 2013 for another 10 years, meaning that the earliest the team could expect to move to their own venue penalty-free would be 2024. And Steve Ballmer, being the 6th richest person in the world as of 2023, intended to do exactly that. Rumors started surfacing in the summer of 2016 that Ballmer had begun exploring as many as 6 different locations around Los Angeles for a new arena. While not confirming nor denying his intentions to the media, it was understood that Ballmer was looking to build a new arena from the ground up, something that another franchise owner was already in the process of doing, albeit on a much larger scale. Stan Kroenke had spent a near decade making the stars align to relocate the Rams back to Los Angeles from St. Louis, securing the 60-acre Hollywood Park horse racetrack property in 2014, a property the NFL had had their sights on for decades. He intended to use the site to construct a new stadium he would finance himself, and also had plans for professional studios and a multi-use district that would transform the somewhat decrepit area of Inglewood. Just by coincidence, the property was immediately south of the historic Forum, which had just completed a near $100 million renovation by its new owners, the Madison Square Garden Company, to make it a renowned venue for concerts and traveling shows, with documentation coming out later about attempts to lure the Lakers back to the property that never had any real momentum. Even with Kroenke requiring a substantial amount of land for a stadium and mixed-use development, there were still some undeveloped sites south of his property due to abandoned buildings being recently demolished. Part of the land was then leased to MSG as supplementary parking to the Forum, and as far as I understand, the land was technically owned by the city of Inglewood. In the spring of 2017, Inglewood Mayor James Butts called MSG executives to request a premature breaking of the lease on said parking lot, Butts telling MSG that the city was planning to use the land for a business park and tech hub. The executives agreed to a lease termination agreement that included a clause stating that the land couldn't be used for anything that would negatively impact their business. In addition, the contract did not afford any opportunity for MSG to purchase the land either. Needless to say, this was only the start of a war between MSG and Ballmer. Then in June, city officials shocked Los Angeles when they announced that they had approved a negotiating agreement with Ballmer to use the land for a new basketball arena that would sit only 1.5 miles away from the Forum, and MSG executives were furious and began funneling money into neighborhood groups to prop up their lawsuits, among taking their own legal actions to block the new arena, including filing a court injunction in March 2018 and asking a judge to restore their original parking lot lease with the city of Inglewood. That fall, Ballmer and MSG each pumped millions into opposing candidates in the Inglewood mayor's campaign, knowing that the future of their respective venues were on the line. Butts wound up being elected to a third term, and so MSG resumed its legal battle, which Ballmer later stated was getting, quote, awkward. The following summer 2019, the Clippers announced that high-profile NBA stars Paul George and reigning Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard would be joining the team. Ballmer saying he screamed when he found out both players would be coming to his club, and has since put both players center stage in promotions for the new arena. Only a few weeks later, Ballmer presented cardboard models and renderings of the project from AECOM Hunt, an estimated $2 billion arena that would be the new home to the Clippers and include a new 86,000 square foot practice facility, 25,000 square foot medical facility, and a 71,000 square foot team headquarters. It would have a capacity of 18,500 fans and open by the beginning of the 2024 NBA season. Ballmer stated that he understood the cultural nature of the team being dependent largely on free agents, and said further that his intentions are to maximize the player experience. He also stated that he wanted the fan atmosphere to mimic that of a college fieldhouse, with large grandstands that go from bottom to top uninterrupted by suites or tiers, to create a wall of sound that he called quite creatively the Wall, which in total will be 51 continuous rows that can accommodate 4,500 fans behind the visiting team's bench alone. The team has ordered from Daktronics a never-before-seen double-sided 4K Halo display board that will circle the top of the arena and measure 32 feet high by 623 feet internal circumference, with the outer display being a little shorter from top to bottom. Courtside seats will have private parking and entrance into the arena, and in addition to access to the Gold Club, they will also have what appear to be courtside suites along the baselines, called courtside cabanas, with traditional courtside seats and a private suite-like space only a few steps from the court. There will also be backstage bungalows that at a glance seem like suites that don't have a view of the court, but are intended for guests sitting in the lower bowl seating. Finally, the new venue will have traditional yet smaller suites called Halo Suites that, while not clearly stated, are likely to be higher up in the arena. The seats in the Arena Bowl, which Ballmer stated have the most legroom of the entire NBA, 2 inches more than typical, are divided by the various clubs they have access to, including the Red Club, the Green Club, the Orange Club, and the Loft. The building looks to achieve the LEED Platinum certification for sustainability and will be 100% carbon neutral, with 2 megawatts of solar panels on its roof, with 11 megawatts of battery storage, enough capacity to run an entire NBA game or concert off of battery power. As a result of the pandemic and sustainability pressures, the building will have 100% natural ventilation and no air inside the arena will be recycled in the building's HVAC system. Also, there will be an 80,000 square foot plaza that is modeled after the Toronto Raptors Jurassic Park and will feature 2 bars, a restaurant, team store, full-size basketball court, and an oversized projection screen. The next hurdles for the project to break ground were environmental impact studies and a community benefit agreement, not to mention defeating the ongoing legal attacks from the Madison Square Garden Company. Environmental impact studies would prove to be more difficult than typical because 1, we're talking about California here, and 2, the arena's design had to comply with FFA regulations due to its proximity to the airport, and while the building is going to be carbon neutral, the development must be carbon negative as a whole, which includes the estimated impact of increased traffic, which can be offset by increased access to public transit under California law. The next significant development came when California Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 987 into law, which placed a hard cap on how long litigation can stall the project, in addition to severely limiting what kinds of litigation a judge can rule on to halt construction. Similar legislation was passed during the construction of SoFi Stadium and the Sacramento Kings' new arena. MSG consequently extended their legal fight, suing the state of California and Governor Newsom, and officials estimated that MSG had already slowed progress on the Clippers' new arena by nearly a year at this point. Newsom also approving the environmental impact plan along with the Clippers' list of mitigations, despite the report raving about traffic issues that will result due to the proximity of the 3 major venues. One of the biggest issues to congestion is that all 3 entities, SoFi Stadium, the Forum, and the Clippers' new arena, would operate independently of one another, making coordination of schedules very difficult. On top of that, the biggest obstacle in Ballmer's way throughout this entire process had been MSG, who weren't backing down. So, the 6th richest person in the world does what we all wish we could do with our competitors. He bought them out, purchasing the Forum from the Madison Square Garden Company in March of 2020 for $400 million. MSG had purchased the declining arena in 2012 for only $23.5 million and then completed a $100 million renovation, and after the sale, they subsequently dropped all their lawsuits. Ballmer promising to continue utilizing both venues, a statement that will have to be proven once the new arena opens. After that mess was finally resolved, the Inglewood City Council unanimously approved the Clippers Community Benefits Agreement in July 2020. The $100 million package included a $75 million low-interest loan for a yet-to-be-awarded nonprofit to build affordable housing, $6 million to renovate the city's library and build a community center, $8.5 million for scholarships and after-school programs, among many other benefits, including 35% of event staffing being local residents out of the estimated 7,000 jobs the arena will create. The city believes that the arena will produce $3 to $4.3 million in tax revenues annually, depending on what, if any, development springs up around the new venue, and more broadly result in an estimated $260 million in economic activity per year. With the environmental studies out of the way, MSG removed from the situation, and the community benefit agreement approved, the new arena was in the home stretch before groundbreaking, and developments on the project remained dormant while architects and engineers finalized the site plan and related aspects. Ballmer, along with project, local, state, and team officials and Clipper players, participated in a groundbreaking ceremony for the new arena on September 17, 2021. The team revealing days before that they had agreed to a 23-year naming rights deal with Intuit, provider of TurboTax and other accounting software, who will name the arena the Intuit Dome. While it's a private agreement, speculators suggest that the deal is worth no less than $500 million. Among the many things Steve Ballmer said during the event, and his over-the-top enthusiasm, he emphasized the significance historically for the franchise, which to date has yet to earn an NBA championship, stating, "We want to build a home that is our own. That sets a standard for us. We don't play in anybody's shadow." The ceremony actually marked the first time the team had all the land needed for the project, with Inglewood claiming the last several parcels left through eminent domain. Now, with everything in place, construction finally began. As of making this video, we're still about 7 months out from when the Intuit Dome is expected to open. Obviously, substantial progress has been made and the project is on schedule, and as far as I can tell, I believe the Arena Bowl itself is entirely enclosed, but it appears that the concourses and walkways outside the court are exposed to the elements. The arena is surrounded by a red metal web and then covered in ETFE panels, a signature of stadiums recently. But the panels are positioned in a way to where they don't totally seal the inside from the outside. The red web to me looks incredibly 90s, so I really need to see a completed dome before passing any judgment. Also, I get it's California, but I'm not a fan of these open-air concept venues, especially as air conditioning is becoming more necessary in places where it didn't used to be. The topping out ceremony, when the final beam is placed, took place on March 7th, 2023. Ballmer, Mayor Butts, and others speaking to workers and Clippers players at the event. I'm sure there's a good chunk of you out there questioning if Ballmer ever considered relocating the Clippers, especially considering his efforts to bring basketball to Seattle. While I'm not inside his head, it appears that he never even considered it, and at first he had no ambition to move out of Staples Center. And to support his decision to keep the Clippers in Los Angeles, they've never had poor turnout, finishing top 10 in attendance in the NBA 6 out of the last 10 seasons, which to me would warrant building a new arena I have more control over versus relocating to Seattle or Las Vegas as opponents were calling for. While some of it is self-inflicted, the Clippers have always been a second-tier team in the NBA, never quite on par with their peers. While it does feel like a waste for there to be 4 separate NBA-caliber arenas in Los Angeles, with soon only one to be shared and one not used for sports at all, I do think the Clippers establishing their own arena is very important for them to take their franchise to the next level, especially when you're sharing a venue with a team as loved and historic as the Lakers. I also think that as sports continues to grow in popularity and consequently revenue and valuations, we're just going to continue to see things happen across sports that didn't make sense 10 or 20 years ago, with that sentiment only accelerating. Whether it's NIL and cross-country mega conferences in college sports, or large media markets having 4 NBA caliber arenas, I am excited to see what becomes of a franchise that has only been relevant recently in my lifetime, but for now, we're just going to have to wait for construction on the Intuit Dome to be complete, and we here at Libreeze TV will be watching closely.